I have with me here today Jacob Werksman and Adam Weiner. I'm so grateful to have both of these teammates here for our first in this series to talk about the Victory Strategies story. Now, in any intro video you will see for Victory Strategies, you will see labels. Fortune 500 entrepreneurs, Olympic athletes, fighter pilots, Navy SEALs. But every person on this team is so much more than those labels. And that is a huge part of why we decided to reignite the Victory Strategies podcast, the Victory podcast, for this series, to go beyond the labels. What I'd love to do before we kick off the conversation, instead of a traditional introduction, can you each share 10 words or labels that describe who you are or represent experiences you've had who shaped the person you've become?
Strike, thanks so much for having us, and really excited for you to be the next host of the Victory Podcast. We know you're going to elevate it to the next level. Yeah, to answer your question, that's unique. Let's see. I'll try to keep it to 10. Husband, father, American, Danish, Navy SEAL, entrepreneur, academic, executive fellow. That's one word. Student, friend, author. That's 10, I think.
Look, you can. It's a plus or minus. It's a ish, 10-ish.
Cool.
All right, Adam. Thank you.
Good job, Jacob. Husband, father, patriot, Navy SEAL, entrepreneur, season of life, father. That's 10.
It's 10 words.
Or less.
Jacob, you make me want to change mine. I'm an Air Force veteran. I'm an aircraft maintainer, a leader, a speaker, a mental health advocate. But then you go Danish. So I'm an Italian, Irish, Hispanic. All of that is a huge part of who I am. I love that. I know your stories are out there. You've both been on podcasts. You've both shared, your story as leaders and what's in the bio. What I'd like to know to kick this off is what experiences in your life shaped you as a leader and brought you to where you are today. Jacob, we'll start with you again.
What comes to mind is, of course, my childhood and upbringing. My father never graduated high school, came back from Israel with my mom and started a small business up in upstate New York with a couple $100 in his pocket, right? So really led by example from personifying that the American dream is alive and well. You just need to put in the work. My mom, strong woman, became a school nurse and really saw just my two hardworking parents be great role models for leadership and leadership behaviors growing up. So, of course, home life and those types of influences, for me, I'll speak from experience, really shaped some of the initial characteristics, attributes, leadership foundations, etc. Accelerating through that, I would say every life experience and every interaction with every human being. Whether they've been in my life a long time or a short time, I genuinely believe I've taken away something from every human interaction I've had that's influenced or shaped who I am as a leader. And then, of course, the personal and professional dynamics we're all going through every single day. Being a good spouse, a good friend, having, trying to maintain healthy and good relationships, trying to provide for your family and accomplish things professionally and expand your brain academically. All of those things have been contributing factors to, I believe, what shaped me and some of my leadership style today. And then, of course, this team, right? The Victory Strategies team, if we bring it all the way up to modern day, I tell people all the time, I may be the youngest on the team, but I am absorbing and extracting and trying to learn as much as I can from the incredible leaders on this team that have decades of experience like you and Adam. And so just extremely blessed and continue to be thirsty for education and new opportunities and experiences to hopefully define who I am tomorrow and today. And then I picked this up transitioning out of the SEAL teams, but a mentor said, hey, if you go into every environment trying to continuously be a white belt for the rest of your life, you're always going to be learning and absorbing as much as you can. So maybe I'd add that to my 10 words, white belt. So
Listening to Jacob, I don't think I had the maturity Jacob did growing up. I was a brat and probably lacked the wisdom to learn from the good role model that my parents were for me. And then I took that immature attitude into the Naval Academy and got beat down by peers and seniors, and it didn't work, and really started to have an epiphany of I need to change my ways. Tried to pay attention to the people around me in the service, and my time in the service really shaped my leadership. Obviously, it's a loaded question, and it goes long, but I would fast forward in my career. Towards the end, I was the operations officer at SEAL Team 1, and any operations officer in any branch of the service knows it's a grinder. It's kind of the nerve center. The role was overloading me. There weren't enough minutes in the day to keep up with stuff. Meanwhile, I was in charge of the operations department, had a dozen people working directly for me, and had troop commanders and platoon commanders that would report up to me. And what I failed to do in that role was leadership. I did the management. I did all the tasks. And that was a horrible feeling because it was later in my career, and you would think, you're on your game, you're sharp with your leadership. So moving into my next role as the executive officer at SEAL Team 7, being a bit OCD, I just had to time block. All I saw was the to-do lists. I would add to my calendar time to do the walkarounds, schedule time to just do one-on-ones with different people at the command. It wasn't like an equality thing where I could get to everyone, but I would just chip away at it one at a time and let it flow. And that was so rewarding for everyone, me most of all, but really developed those relationships. And so that was over a decade now that I've been out. I've been an entrepreneur, run my own business, and I work with teams. And to this day, I always make time with people that I work with to schedule to sit down over lunch or coffee. And, again, with the OCD, the tasks are always going to be there. You never have enough time. So for me, I just had to make it proactive and make the time. I think it comes naturally for other people. But where I sit today with leadership it's so basic. It's all about the people.
Adam, one of the reasons we talked about having this conversation was we had a team offsite in October of 2024. And you all have been a part of this team for a long time. You know each other well. And I will say that skill set you just mentioned has become natural for you because you were the person that was circuiting that room. I can't tell you how many times you and I had a conversation, different ones every time, and you probably left that place knowing more about my life story. And I'm not a person that sits down and starts sharing my life story. I sit and listen. Because you engage those conversations, if you talk about it's all people, it made it feel like a safe environment. It made it feel welcoming, and it made it feel like a team. And you did that more than any member of this team. Many others did it as well, but I think it's more muscle memory for you than you give yourself credit for.
Well, it's the best part of being part of Victory Strategy. Iron sharpens iron. So, for me, at the top of the list is just the ability to be around so many great people. It feeds me, and, it's a missed opportunity if I don't have the chance to hear all these experiences from everyone. So yeah, I love those offsites where we get everybody together.
Well, before we get into that piece of it, Jacob, you mentioned there were people on your journey that shaped you as a leader. Are there any that come to mind that you think are particularly meaningful to you?
Two come to mind in my forming years as a young adolescent, I'll share. And the first one's Dr. Leahy, who was one of my 8th grade teachers. And, at this time I had really transformed. I used to be a chubby, a little overweight kid. And one summer I put my mind to it and really understood what I was capable of with my mindset by saying, before school starts over this, at the end of this summer, I'm going to lose 30 pounds. I'm going to look great. I'm going to be ready for football season. And I did it, right? And I defined a plan and stuck to it. And so entering that 8th grade year, I'm playing 4 sports. I'm doing all the after school activities. I'm trying to get A's and B's, all of the other stuff that exemplifies being a good student. And I come into Dr. Leahy's class early one morning. I had him first. I walk in and, he saw some accomplishment I had in a sport. And he's like, hey, Jacob, can I talk to you for a minute? And he pulls me aside. He's like, how are you? And I'm like, I'm fine. What do you mean? And he's like, no, but how are you? He asked me like 3 times. And then I told him all the things I'm doing. And he said, that's great, but how are you? And then I started to understand, his question. And then when I gave him a response, then he did the why, right? Then he said, okay. He's like, well, why is that a priority to? And I answered, and he said, why? And he just kept saying why to me. All the way down to where I didn't have a response anymore. I just had a lot of thought and a lot of thinking that I needed to do. And I just remember reflecting on that interaction and exchange where I think was the first time to date that I can recognize someone had drastically influenced my decision outside of like social and standard academic norms of, covering a topic or learning a new skill, etc. It was like the entry point to deep thinking. And so I've tried to carry that with me throughout the rest of my life, right? And if I did a root cause analysis, which you would appreciate, being a PhD, I would get drawn back to his questions why. The other person that comes to mind on the athletic side is football linebacker coach I had, Coach Brown. I remember had a good football career throughout high school, was captain, was linebacker, started most of the time, and was just an average player, but really put in a lot of hard work in the offseason. And I remember leaving, graduating high school, going on, finally becoming a Navy SEAL. And I remember it was like important to me to go see Coach Brown, shake his hand, look him in the eye, say, thanks for, believing in me and pushing me throughout the years. And when I did, I remember saying, hey, I've become a Navy SEAL, so I feel good about accomplishing my lifelong goal, and my ego was thirsty for like, pour it on me, like tell me how great I am. And he just looks at me and he goes, yeah, man, that's great. Congratulations. What's next? And I just remember thinking like, what's next? I just became a Navy SEAL. And he's like, yeah, but you'll see soon enough. Like you just accomplished something big and bold, and now you're going to redefine something else and go and tackle that. So that really challenged me from like, hey, once you summit, there's other summits. And that's not to say don't have contentment and celebrate wins and victories, but also have the realization that life is it's a long marathon, and you have the capability to accomplish a lot, and not just micro accomplishments or, accomplish a big endeavor and then, hey, I'm complacent now. I did it. I'm going to rest on my accomplishment of yesterday for the rest of my life. No, that's not who any three of us or anyone on this team is. And so looking back, right, I was 20 years old when I became a SEAL. That was a big deal.
As you're sharing those examples, they resonate with me so much, because if I'm asked the same question, my answers are a high school physics teacher and a basketball coach. You talk about those questions and they're discreet about it. Teachers have a gift, because in my case, it was a high school physics teacher. I don't think he ever told me I should join the military, think about it. There was no active anything. He got to know me, like Adam talked about. He got to know me, and it was straight inception. He knew and saw that it would change my life and that I was suited to it, but also that it would help me look further than I was in survival mode, looking day to day. And it was like, I never doubted that I could do things, but I never even let myself think beyond it. And these teachers do it in ways that just light that spark. And man, yeah, high school basketball coach was the first person that I flew a flag for on my first deployment to Afghanistan. But it's not like you realize it at the time until I was sitting out there in this crazy leadership role. And I realized I would not be the leader I am without the way he had pushed me and held me accountable and shown me what it looks like to fight hard. In my case, it was usually fighting hard to sit on a bench. But it changed me as a person. I love how those stories can shape us. What's the next summit? That's the way you lead this team. That's the way we all are, but the caveat you added of being content and celebrating victories, that's a really cool balance. And to realize where you got that from, I love that.
Yeah, and Rick, we're just two. I mean, you and I are just two examples of stories or transformational moments that teachers and academics and, I don't know about you, but I went to a public school, so like these are just the teacher everyone thinks about, with the typical stereotype and not a ton of compensation, etc. And they're transforming lives every day. So it's just special to hear that. Thanks for sharing.
No, absolutely. And I think it's really cool as you have kids, grow a family, grow a team, all those things. Jacob has the infant level. We're all at different stages in this whole parenting journey. And you go, okay, it's really cool when you see your kids exposed to coaches and teachers that just shift a little bit of how they think. I think that's such a special thing. And they're learning teamwork. They're learning what leadership is at such an early age. One of the other things that struck me at our team's offsite in October was both of you in an informal setting. You know, there's one thing to be the marketing videos and all this, but in an informal setting, over a beverage, outside, after the day is done, sharing stories about how this team came together. And I'm going to get to that. But first, what I hadn't heard until more recently was the story of how the two of you met ahead of this assembly of victory strategy. So how did the two of you first meet?
Jacob was trying to keep up with me on a Monster Mash, which is like a big physical event. A bunch of people on the West Coast, a bunch of SEALs. So he was probably just staring at my back the whole time. Is that about right, Jacob?
We're in the business of integrity and authenticity, and that was not it, Adam. I mean, there was a portion of truth there. Yeah, Strike. I was just graduating, or just soon to be graduating SEAL qualification training, SQT, and then quickly departing for the SEAL team I was attached to on the East Coast, and there in Coronado, California, one of the big culminations, as Adam was referencing, is the Monster Mash, which is this huge half-day physical evolution where you're going through multiple exercises. It's really just a suck fest, like let's make something suck so that you can feel good on the other end of it and do something hard together, which is obviously a huge piece of the SEAL community. And so our class started this thing early in the morning, and I'm sure, Adam, you can probably fill in some color here, but I'm sure every SEAL team on the West Coast was notified they could participate in this, and only like 4 or 5 SEALs show up. Granted, a lot of them are deployed and training and spending time with their families. This is a Friday morning, but Adam was one of the guys that showed up, and we're running this thing, and it was like a swim and then a run and then an O course or obstacle course and then a finish on the beach with, I think, some sprints or relay races or buddy carries, who knows. And then I remember concluding, and Adam came up to me, like gave me a slap on the shoulder, and at this time I'm still a SEAL student, and Adam's a seasoned officer in the SEAL teams, so I'm like, oh sir, hey, what's up? And he's like, I was following the flag on your back the whole time. And so for those listening, I have a American flag tattooed on my back, and which I think might be new, Strike, on the podcasts, because I don't think I've shared that openly. And then Adam turns around, and I look at his back, and he's got Hebrew written on his back. And I said to him, hey, are you Jewish? And he looked at me with like the raised eyebrow when he turned back around and was like, yes. And I'm like, I'm Jewish too. And it was just cool for me because, growing up, didn't know a Navy SEAL, really had huge regard for all the Navy SEALs and these guys I visualize as my role models, etc. And now I've only been in these constraints where they've been instructors and have been able to completely control my life for 2 years. And then I meet, a Navy SEAL officer who happens to be Jewish, and I just thought that was super cool. And so he turns around, he's like, yeah, and we started talking, and then I went off to the East Coast. He finished out his career, and up until the point of reconnecting and coming together for VS, we didn't see each other or cross paths again.
So, yeah, I want to jump in there. I had mentioned earlier when I was operations officer at SEAL Team 1 and mentally not in the best spot, like I knew something was off, that's when I was struggling. That's when I actually did that Monster Mash. I was not volunteering for anything, and it was a cry for help in my own world. I was like, you know what, dude, just get out of here and go do that. Try to clear your head. Very out of shape, which is the only reason why maybe I saw Jacob's flag on his back. But yeah, that's the time period. And in my world, Jacob's a young guy, just finished training. I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and my wife knows I'm coming home unhappy, and I'm trying to figure out this operations role. So that chance meeting with Jacob, my brain, nothing stayed in there. It came in and went right out the window. So fast forward roughly 10 years, maybe 9 years. I'm in a different stage in life, probably equally struggling, professionally, trying to figure myself out outside of the Navy, even though I was 7 years still out of it. And I had created a little business where I was doing keynote speaking and executive coaching. I had left, the nice corporate job with the big salary and benefits. Told my wife as she was pregnant with our third child, hey, what do you think we just give up all this and I'll just go out there and I'll make it. And, we could live off our savings until I do. And she's like, no, that's a great plan. That's just what every spouse wants to hear from their provider. So it was tough. I was struggling, and I ended up doing this half pivot back to something a little bit more traditional, where I had partnered with a financial advisor, but I was independent so I could keep my passion of speaking and coaching. And Jacob had come across some of my stuff that he'd seen online. And I was literally in a spot in my life, the rabbi says there's no coincidences, where I was so emotionally tied. You can imagine the hard decision of leaving that corporate job to put everything you've got into someone's going to pay me to do my passion of talking to people about mindset and leadership and character because it's needed. There's a need for it. Well, just because there's a need for it doesn't mean you can provide for your family. And I learned that, right? So that's why I kind of had I was pivoting between these two lines of work. And what was happening is, to truly get where I needed to be in the more traditional route, I was getting further away from the passion work. And it was sad. And that hurt. I was kind of struggling with all that. And I'm thinking, you just, at the end of the day, my family got to provide. And here comes Jacob with this idea of victory strategies, when I was right at a spot in my life when I needed a lifeline for that passion. And as we're talking, it was kind of like, yes, oh, this is perfect. This is just what I needed. This is a great idea. I essentially had a similar idea, but Jacob had it tighter. And I was like, hey man, I am on your train. Let's do this. And then it was a throwaway. It was like, hey, by the way, do you happen to have a tattoo on your back? And this is like a Zoom meeting, and I'm like, this guy is weird. What is he? I knew he was researching me, but I don't know if that's online anywhere. I just kind of bring it up because that's the magic in life. I think, at least for me, I have faith, and I don't think that's a coincidence, and neither Jacob nor I planned that. But it's kind of cool to see the magic of how things can come full circle like that, and somebody else is pulling the strings.
Yeah, and I know we want to get into, what came next with Victory Strategies, but I'm going to pause there because you and I, one of the things we talked about when you and I met at that offsite, I was just under a year from my own military transition. And, we talked a little bit about struggle throughout the journey, but in that transitional journey, for a lot of us when we come into the military, because the three of us all happen to be military, most of, Victory Strategies is a huge, wide demographic of people, but the three of us happen to share that experience. We put that uniform on, and it is our identity in a lot of ways. And whether it's taken us away from something or towards something, or just gives us something that makes it so we don't have to define who we are, the military does that for us a little bit. And that transition out can be tough. Can you just, talk a little bit about how that struggle, acknowledging it, facing it, whether it's with that, that event on the beach where you're chasing Jacob's flag, or as you're kind of chasing identity through that transition, how did that shape the next interactions and where you are today?
Yeah, it's a great question, Strike, and it definitely has shaped me because, that military transition is difficult. It's so unique because it's such a big part of your identity, and there is just no replacing it. And I think it just takes time for everyone, and it's a different amount of time for different people. It took me years, but then the beauty of Victory Strategies was the idea to pay it forward and try to help other people. Veterans aren't the only people that have an identity crisis at some point in their life. It's a human experience that's universal and that you can really relate to people. Been on the side of the mountain, struggling, scratching and clawing metaphorically to understand, where am I at right now, who am I, and how do I deal with that? And Victory Strategies gave us this platform to go around and help people. And when we come across young leaders and even senior leaders, will hear that. I think the shaping of it for me was just a a sad transition of you're getting older and it's a different season of life. And while you were so excited about the sexier season of life, nobody can stop time. It's easier for me now that I've got this new haircut, as my youngest son reminds me that I'm old. So there's been a lot more acceptance now.
You touch on something, because that transition is something we all can relate to as veterans in any capacity. But what we take for granted is what that means to other people in leadership in life. Our athletes, our Olympic teammates, that is probably a more jarring transition, because it's a little bit harder to find that parallel from a sport. And I've known so many people who've struggled through that sense of purpose coming out of sports. You talk about any sort of high performing team leadership, whether it's corporate, small business, huge corporation. Once you step away from leadership or make the choice to pivot into something new, it feels very isolating. And some of that desire for teamwork, because you're a teammate as a leader, it's a void. And it's something that uniquely we've all shared that desire to fill that void. And I'm going to go back to Jacob. When we talk about that idea of victory strategies and that spark, which Adam's alluded to, where were you in life when this started to kind of come to life as an idea?
I was nearing transition out of the SEAL teams, and I think the first seed was, I'll give it two parts here. The first seed was a former colleague of mine from the Navy. He had gotten out 2 years before me, and he was the coach of a private high school's water polo team in San Francisco. And he called me one day, I'm transitioning, so I'm doing a lot of admin and operational work to get out. And he called me and he said, hey, could you come out and teach some leadership attributes, lessons, and put my team through some physical exercises, and we'll pay you. I said, oh, okay. You'll give me money to go do that? It's something that Adam just shared, that we love and I'm passionate about? Sure. So I fly out there, we do it, literally molding and influencing the next generation of leaders to come into society here in the United States. And man, that felt great, right? And I think, when we'll pay you, I think it really just covered my costs out there. So I essentially did it for free, but it was incredible to see the need for it at every level of society. So that planted the seed of, hey, this could be something really cool. And that was so much fun. What if I could do things like that and influence people and teams like that for the rest of my life? That'd be a really cool thing to do. Fast forward 6 months, I transition out of the military. I get the opportunity to go up to Boston to attend Harvard Business School's executive MBA alternative program called the Program for Leadership Development, 9-month accelerated program. And I'm there and I'm going into these classrooms, and some of me has imposter syndrome because I'm like, everyone here is a global executive with global business experience. Our cohort had 40 plus countries represented with leaders in the room. And we'd get in these classrooms, we'd go over case studies. When it came to operations, supply chain, human resources, and a lot of finance, accounting, etc., man, I was lost. I was struggling to keep up. I was writing vigorously as much notes as I could. But then enter the topics on decision making, crisis management, risk mitigation, leadership, team dynamics, conflict resolution. These topics, when they would come up, I almost would look at my classroom colleagues with like shock, right? I was flabbergasted because their responses were so different. It was such a different approach to leadership and decision making, conflict resolution, risk mitigation than I had previously known from my time in the SEAL teams. And so when I would raise my hand and contribute, I would start seeing my peers and colleagues in the classroom start taking all their notes. And then I would have peers come up to me on break and say, hey, Jacob, I want to know more about that. Can we go a couple layers deep? That was thoughtful, et cetera, compliments, right? And then I had a couple professors do the same, and I'm like, holy crap. What seemed to me was just normal and a normal way of looking at leadership and team dynamics to many of these business executives was revolutionary or unorganic to them and abnormal to them. And so I share that because I put myself in an environment, of course, who's going to say no to Harvard Business School, but I put myself in an environment where I was a white belt again. I was coming from a very confident position as a Navy SEAL and a team leader and a sniper, and then transitioning into an unknown environment where I knew I was probably the least knowledgeable as it pertained to business. And so, with all of the positive feedback and response to some of the thoughts on leadership that I had shared, I said, okay, well, maybe we can combine the Seed 1 and the experience of impacting teams 6 months ago with what Phase 2 could really be like and the start of something. And so took a step back, conducted a market analysis. I knew to do that much, and really recognized there was two types of leadership training, coaching, and development firms that existed, either exclusively private sector or exclusively former military members. And we know who fits these buckets and categories right now, right? If you're a listener, all these names are popping into your head. And I said, well, what if we could assemble a team of the greatest leaders from the greatest institutions and organizations onto one team so that we could essentially provide value to any team in the world? And
team the Avengers, by the way.
The team of the Avengers. So anyway, I shared that to say that's where the idea formed. That was kind of the lead up and build into it. Happy to share any more thoughts that you think would be interesting to the listeners, but those are my experiences that kind of created what Victory Strategies is, or at least the forming foundation of what it is today.
Adam brought it up. I don't know if I was going to go there, but when we were talking about this conversation, it probably was Adam that brought up, the Avengers Assemble analogy. I'm a big nerd for comic books and superhero stuff, so I really appreciated that, because an origin story is one thing, but the magic for Victory Strategies really was in the assembly of the team and how it evolved. And if you fast forward, you talk about being in a room and growing, being challenged and feeling a little bit out of your depth. That's where you grow as a leader. That's where you really learn. And sitting in that same offsite, again, being a new teammate, and the people I learned from were not the ones with similar experience to me. We learn from each other all the time, but we're speaking the same language. And being in a room with people where you go, man, I love that, and I don't understand it, but I want to know more. That gives you perspectives and starts to help you relate to people and relate to experiences in ways that you can't just going off of your own experience or people who have a similar worldview. When it comes to Victory Strategies, how did that story shape over time? You're both huge parts of the puzzle when you talk about these things coming together and becoming Victory Strategies. You've got these two ideas. How did that become what we all know now?
Well, I'm going to jump in there because just hearing Jacob talk, it warms my heart because it's grown so much. I mean, essentially, people are listening to this and checking out the team today. Oh yeah, that makes sense. But the history of it is it started as the three amigos. I mean, there's 3 people, and then maybe 4, and then 5, half a dozen. Years go by, okay, 8, and it didn't happen overnight. So it's well, it all briefs well and sounds perfect. It's so cool just to see that it's just been nothing but a rocket ship in the right direction of getting better and better and better, and kind of back to Leadership 101. It's just all about the people. Jacob gets this, and that's been so cool for me because there's kind of some generational gaps on the team, just to call it out. Jacob's a new father. My kids are 14, 12, and 9. Jeff Boyer's a grandfather. We've got other grandfathers that have grandchildren that are going off to college. And it's morphed over time where I have received great mentorship from a guy like Jeff, and at the same time, Jacob's leading us, spearheading us through, and he's pulling me aside and he's asking me questions. There's things that some of us, just like any team, you do well that other people don't do as well. And that's what I saw in Jacob from the very beginning. There were pieces of this business that I so passionately wanted to be a part of, but they didn't come naturally to me. I can work on them, and that's admirable, but you win on your strengths and you work on your weaknesses. And so I just felt like the the assembly of Victory Strategies, while Jacob gets most of the credit for having the vision of creating the values and the structure to ensure the right people were coming through the door, there was an element of just like this beautiful motley crew of assembly of these different generational demographics and skill sets that has created like this beautiful canvas that we're all working off of now.
Jacob, from your perspective, that ability to take in new perspectives is one thing, but to allow it to shape your experience and reframe how you approach things, and again, reshape how you color that canvas as you go, I think that's very rare and that's very unique. In my experience, having explored this space of corporate and consulting and coaching and all of these things, it was something that was really unique and surprising and exciting to me, especially once I learned more about where it started. And day by day, we all spend time together every week, and every week there's something that's like, here's the adjustment, here's the learning point, here's the debrief, here's where we're going to go. And it's such a healthy, open expression of different perspectives. I think that's incredible for you from start to now. What pieces of that journey stand out to you?
Just first, Adam, thanks. It puts a smile on my face that we're fortunate enough to have the gift of this conversation just years later. And, I share this every time we connect one-on-one or we're together. I'll never forget, the origination and belief you had in me in this vision and the direction, and how much of a heavy and positive influence you and Jeff Boyer and some of the original team members contributing to this and equally creating this, how much that means to me. So thanks, man. A few things. I mean, just full disclosure, I think it's important to share there wasn't much to go on, right? It was a brand, it was a vision, it was preliminarily created. We didn't have any resources. My wife and I were recently transitioned. We had no money. Started Victory Strategies with my life savings, literally on a fold-out collapsible table, while we were living in my parents' home in Central Florida, rent-free, thank God. Thank you, Mom and Dad. The only grocery store we shopped in for 2 years was BJ's, so we could buy in bulk and economically. We didn't eat in a restaurant unless my parents were visiting. We didn't do any couple activities that we had to pay for, right? We rode bikes together. We bought practice golf balls so we could swing the clubs in the backyard. We went on long walks. We did these things so that any type of money we could scrape together could go towards starting the business. So all the people in my life at that time, thank you for believing in me and supporting me to be able to do that. To my wife, Jessie, thanks for going along the ride with me in the early stages. And then to my teammates, Adam and Jeff. I mean, these guys, they knew what it was getting into it. And so I think back to what Adam had shared, the belief in the vision and what this could become. And of course, the people side of it, we really connected not on skills. We already had that. Not on credibility or credentials. We already had that. It was the interpersonal dynamics. It was the values. It was the common operating agreements and systems we all worked on and lived on. I think those are a contributing factor to us being enabled to create or lay the foundation for what our team is today. So, man, those stand out to me. I remember our first offsite. I'm like, hey guys, sorry, I don't have any money to pay for this, but if we want to get together and get this continuing education, here's what it would cost each of you. Would you be willing to do it? They all said yes. Out of pocket, no guarantees, no follow-on, nothing, just a vision and a hope. And so they fly down. We're, in an Airbnb in Southern Florida. I pick them up in my 15-year-old minivan, and we would roll around in that. Those are some of my favorite memories because
Jacob makes that mean banana bread. Mean.
He does. I got to try that. That tradition has continued.
Yeah, and he had coffee. He was packed his minivan with all the food, the coffee. It was a little Spartan, but it was beautiful.
Is that the reason you continue to rent minivans for offsites, even though your Airbnb has 10 times size? Is that the story behind the minivans?
Great value.
Yeah, we've gone from a 2-bedroom Airbnb with a air mattress on the floor to I don't know how many bedrooms was in the last one
There's,
for offsite 20,
Yeah.
25. Yeah, short answer, Strike. That full credit there goes to Mike Wiboko, call sign Loco on our team, former SEAL commander. He's got a good story. When he first came onto the team, him and his wife were RVing around the world. They got to Orlando. They're like, hey, let's grab dinner. I drive out to meet him. And he's like, I got to meet you at the front gate because we're at the RV park. So he's waiting outside. Up until this point, we hadn't met in person. And I swing around and, like, no movement, no response to, like, he doesn't, it's like he doesn't know it's me. And I had to roll down the window and pull up right next to him and be like, hey, man, like, you want to get in the van and we can, drive to your camper? And he was like, dude, I did not expect you to be in a minivan. So now every time we have an offsite, he'll DM me or a side text and be like, minivan, period. So he's the one that keeps us humble with the minivan, and it just makes such good economic sense. You can load from the knees.
There it is.
yeah.
It fits everybody. It's got 12 cup holders in the front. I mean, I could keep going.
Who can diss the minivan? It needs to be added to your intro, though. Minivan chauffeur extraordinaire, Jacob Werksman. So I think one of the things that was really unique to me as a team, you guys all talk about, it's easy to look at, hey, a couple Navy SEALs, these military backgrounds. When I came into the team, it came into my lap at a similar time as you guys talk about it. You're coming out, you know where your sense of purpose is, but it's hard to find it. And meeting with these companies, talking to these teams, which I'll put some of those in air quotes, and then someone tells me, hey, you need to have this conversation with Jakob. I had decided to become this solopreneur. It was okay, I'll just do it on my own. But was that the thing I was looking to do? No, it was just felt like the only authentic way to do it. And as I came in, I have a conversation with you, but my next conversation, you both have mentioned Jeff Boyer. And I've had this joke with a couple other members of the team, and you go, Navy SEAL and fighter pilot, and then there's kind of an all others bucket. My military experience is not fighter pilot, Navy SEAL. As an aircraft maintainer, I related more to Jeff Boyer's leadership experience, this incredible conversation that I didn't expect to have such a common viewpoint or experience in leadership, the way that you value and have created and curated this team of perspectives and gone, hey, we have gaps, we have blind spots. How do we continue to grow to fill those blind spots so that as a team, because every single thing we do is as a team, you may have a client and you may be working with somebody, but we are talking with each other and working as teams. It was so special and unique and so different to anything I had seen in these other companies. How do you go about creating and building and growing that team so purposefully?
I will, but first I'll kick it back to the two of you, and I would love, you guys have each interacted with almost everyone on the team, both in person and of course virtually. What values, themes come to mind that you could say are applicable across the board on our team?
Humility and service come to mind right out the gate.
I think for me, the thing that really made me feel at home and made me feel like I was where I needed to be is that challenging culture. I came from a career field where you're working with people with different perspectives all the time. And when I stepped away from that and into certain other roles, both in my military career and doing consulting afterwards, I realized how unique and how rare cultures that are willing to challenge each other's perspectives and really engage each other openly, transparently, and disagree were. And I was blessed to be in a community where that was the norm. I missed that. And I've realized now I can't exist without that. I need people bluntly challenging me, and I need to be able to do the same. And then we grow and get better. And at the end of the day, we go, hey, that was awesome. We disagreed and it was the best thing ever. And here we are as teammates at the end of the day. So that the academic term, the psychological safety, but that challenging and that growth mindset was a game changer for me across people that very clearly were going to have different worldviews and perspectives that weren't put in a spot to just agree and move forward with that same viewpoint.
We all say on the team, what got you here won't get you there. And it's true. We say it, but more importantly, we live it. We feel it. That's what you were saying, Strike. And I just want to offer up for Jacob, like hearing him use that metaphor. I like this one. We're going to use it. Lifelong white belt. That is who Jacob is. It's the perfect leader for this team. He's always learning. And I can imagine if I'm in his season of life and I'm around the people he has around him, these 2-star generals and VPs of billion-dollar companies, he's like, dang, I better be sharp in getting out there and learning and bringing to this amazing group of people the information and the skill sets that are tip of the spear of what is relevant in today's market. And that's a gift for us, Jacob. And then, we're all trying to do it with each other. But, as it relates to going back to the original question, Strike, hey, how did you develop this team? Jacob, a lot of people know their values, but the execution of maintaining them is so challenging. Everybody can appreciate that. And so I think the credit to the development of the team is this very strict discipline to no compromise on all of the main values.
You have a lot of competitive people on this team, just based on backgrounds and being people that like to challenge themselves and do really hard things. But that collaboration over competition mindset has been absolutely incredible. I mean, I show up on this team, and both of you have mentioned an imposter syndrome. You want to talk about imposter syndrome, look at the roster of people on this team and you go, okay, what is that going to feel like stepping into that? And the first day, I joined the team and we've got our chat where we're chatting every day, but I hadn't been on it. So I didn't see, now I know and feel the happy birthdays, the engagements, the life, the connection of that team. But first day, it's like, all right, see what happens. And I had 3 people reach out immediately, and they were on the phone with me within 12 hours, just saying, hey, let's meet, and how can I help you? And here's what I learned. People that I never knew, had no connection to whatsoever, that didn't have this kind of time, and they offered and reached out to gain that experience. You look at Casey Campbell, she is mentoring those of us who engage in keynote speaking and spending time with us on a very regular basis and treating it as a team mindset when that could be a very competitive environment. And it is in many other places, being mentored and connected as a team and not feeling in any way, shape, or form embarrassed or, okay, that imposter syndrome sets in. It was there for a second. That's been pretty special. And it's something that I didn't think I'd find outside of a military environment. And I've heard the same from all of our colleagues who've had some special teams in their lives, that you've created that value, whatever you want to call it. Again, kind of special, and we're grateful to you for it.
Well, we're all gatekeepers, so thank you all and everyone on this team for really continuing to increase the quality of our team members and take everything we do here personal, because it is. Adam, as always, thanks for so many of the generous words and notes. It's humbling, man. It means a lot, especially coming from you.
Well, I'm going to interrupt you. How
okay.
about that? Just personally, right pre-COVID, everyone knows that time frame. Talk about cool dad points. I scheduled the Disney World trip for my family of 5 from Michigan, flying down, to Orlando right before COVID shut things down. So Disney World's wide open, and we had an Airbnb. And where I'm going with this is. So I was kind of in Jacob's neighborhood. Not literally in his neighborhood, but, in the same city. And I told him I was coming down there, going to Disney World, kind of tight schedule. But he was adamant to come over. And he couldn't just come over. That would have been awesome and fine. No, he had to bring dinner. This is big discussion in the family. What's for dinner? And my wife kept saying, I was like, well, Jacob is he really wants to bring us food. So just let him, So he shows up, him and Jessie, his beautiful wife, and, we're sitting around the table, and my kids are much younger because this is, 5-6 years ago. And so it's kind of, there's a lot of personal connections here because now Jacob's a father of his own, and my cute little kids are now smelly, back-talking teenagers. Times change, but we're all still here to support each other. So, yeah, it's personal. Like I said, leadership more is caught than taught, and so the way Jacob leads Can say it, but he does it, I guess, is my point as it relates to the personal touches. He cares.
So, there's a lot of things I want to say. To not keep us here for hours, I would share this team has done a great job of setting the standards, continuously elevating the quality, holding me accountable, right? Not just each other and themselves, but holding me accountable for what this team should look like and how it should be shaped and things we should consider. So all of those are contributing factors to our success today. Scott Campbell, since he came onto the team and elevated to a leadership position, like that guy's just, anyone who knows him loves him. And he's just been such a tremendous asset and human being to be a part of this team and really help us get to 2.0 as well. Not to mention all of the other wisdom and guidance and expertise from our team members. I just think, on the team component, there's probably a book or a case study here one day on assembling a high quality team and it being a team effort. Just for reference to the listeners, our team right now here in 2025, we get roughly 50 to 100 inquiries a year from potential people that want to be a VS team member. Almost all of them have the credibility and the accomplishments that would qualify them to be a Victory Strategies team member, right? The best of the best within their respective field or domain. What really separates those from who come onto the team or we want on the team from those who aren't are all the qualities you guys just mentioned, right? Humility, service, wanting to be challenged. And I would say those are interconnected to human beings that are authentic, that have a team-first mindset, right? For many of us, actually, every single person on our team came from a great team. They weren't a great solopreneur or individual. They came from a great team. So it never really made sense to me watching so many of our former colleagues and people who have done incredible things on teams leave or transition out of that community and then try to do something as an individual. It's like, that's not where you excel. That's not going to continuously grow and develop you. So we look for the team first mindsets. We look for people that have strong relationships with those around them because that shows so many things, right? It shows humility. It shows a sense of purpose. They care. They invest in human beings and in relationships that they have. We want strong values of individuals. We want to screen for passion. Is this person passionate about relationships, passionate about leadership, passionate about being on a team? I think, and I'm kind of giving some of the secret sauce here, but for me, and this is going to run out of time eventually as I continue to get older, but, especially when I started this company, in my 20s, like, I would connect with the 4-star general. And one of my test indicators was how are they going to respond to getting on a call with me, knowing I essentially am, going to be quote unquote their leader and, have the ultimate decision-making authority to say you're on my team or you're not, or you're on this team or you're not. How are they going to show up to that call? Is it, challenging? Is it humble? Is it peer-to-peer? Is it I'm more experienced, wise, and better than you because I have 40 plus years of experience and I'm a 4-star general coming on to this session with you? And so while I respect and understand those types of mindsets, when appropriate, it's always further humbled me when I get on a discovery session with a Robin Rand, who anyone from the Air Force, in the 21st century knows knows Robin Rand, 4-star general. Many have said one of the greatest leaders they've ever worked for, worked under, worked with. And this dude gets on in, a professional attire in a professional setting, treating it like we are peers. And to me, that's not, something I expect because I am entitled and have this ego, but it just exemplifies so many things, right? A humble leader that wants to grow. Someone who's situational aware of their environment. Someone who I have immediate confidence in that can go deliver or execute strategic engagement or executive coaching alignment with one of our Global 1000 clients or $1 billion privately held clients and their C-suite executives. And when they get on the call, they're going to greet it with that equal level of professionalism where we're talking and coaching a peer and not, I'm a 4-star general, you should listen to me because I've seen it all and done it all. And we've all experienced those types of general officers. So I just share that to say all of those things are the areas and topics we screen for, we look for, and the quality we try to establish on this team. Why? Because everyone on Victory Strategies, all my teammates, all of you, have an expectation that is the standard. So that when we do introduce a strike onto the team, everyone knows this is a great human being who's going to be an asset to the team and elevate us. All of our clients know when we introduce a strike onto the team, this is a great human being that's going to have an opportunity to elevate us and our people and ultimately our performance and our culture. And so I share all that to say, yes, we have to exemplify all the things we're out there preaching, teaching, coaching, and accelerating within teams, individuals, and organizations to be a great team by being practitioners of it ourselves. And, another cheat code here, it's in process. I don't know what tomorrow looks like. We're going to adapt, pivot, overcome, and continuously elevate our processes, our procedures, our human capital, our capabilities, because that's the expectations we have for ourselves, and that's what our clients have for us. A commitment to excellence, never resting on past accomplishments, and continuously accelerating our own leadership and performance so we can influence them.
It's a beautiful thing, and excited for the future and to keep going. The bar is high, but the journey continues. It'll keep moving.
We've talked a lot about internal to the team and that teamwork and that culture. I want to touch on that, the teamwork with clients, with partners, with all of the organizations and individuals that we get to work with. Any gratitude or reflection that you all have on the relationships with the clients and the companies we get to work with?
I think one of the many unique things about our team is, we're not transactional. We have to do that to do business and grow a business, but honestly, from some of the horror stories we hear in our industry, it's contract, it's growth, if it's not in the contract, it doesn't align and we're not doing it. That's not us. We intentionally build in space within our team members' calendars for those time-sensitive calls, so that if one of our coaching clients needs something at an odd hour or it's not scheduled during your next coaching session, guess what? You have the personal cell phone number of your coach. You can reach out to them at any time for a time-sensitive session. Why wouldn't you do that? And I think that emphasizes one of the many differences between coaches who have lived and experienced leadership at every level of an organization, which everyone on the Victory Strategies team has, versus just someone out in the space with a coaching certification and only held, a limited leadership position, right? You all get it. So these leaders that are high octane, high performing, have a lot going on, they have condensed schedules. We adapt to them. And to your question, right, what am I grateful to our clients for? So much. Believing in us, trusting us, having a humble thirst for growing themselves and their people. We've seen this a lot with many organizations, especially and unfortunately those that are publicly traded. They're working so damn hard to get their numbers up and to meet specific endeavors on a quarterly basis that's how they're thinking. They're thinking, what's the best thing for this organization to get to the next quarterly board meeting? And what does that look like, right? Well, it doesn't look like spending or investing a bunch of money in your team and in your culture. It means cutting costs or any anticipated or perceived waste everywhere you can so that the numbers get better. Where when we work with some of our privately held or privately owned and operated companies, these people care deeply about every single employee, or as many of them would refer to those employees, every single family that works for that organization, to the extent where they're not thinking, what's best for the company this quarter or even this year. They're thinking, what's the best thing for us 10 years from now? And almost always, that's investing in your people and your cultures. Peter Drucker, smart dude, culture eats strategy for breakfast. That's the truth. Culture influences performance. My gratitude goes out to the leaders who recognize that, invest in that, and hold us accountable to deliver the best possible product and leadership coaching, training, and execution services that's going to elevate their people and their organization. McKinsey released a study 2 years ago, McKinsey and Company. One of the top 3 reasons employees or team members are leaving their organization One of the top three was a lack of individual growth opportunity for them within the organization. Guess what? The clients we work with, the teammates we work with, they don't have that problem on out processing their attrition evaluations, because all their people are seeing they're investing in them, and the organization seeing it from a performance standpoint, the culture seeing it from a morale and quality standpoint, and ultimately it's just better for the business, it's better for revenue producing, it's better for a culture and an environment to operate in. And so my biggest thing, Strike, all the way back to your question, is just thank you. I have gratitude for our clients and teammates who believe in leadership training, coaching, and development. And as Adam can greatly appreciate, because this is one of the topics he speaks on regularly, your intentions without action don't mean anything. I intended to invest in my culture and my team. I had an intention to provide them quality opportunities to grow and develop as an individual and as a team. That doesn't mean anything. If you pair that intention with action of actually doing it, that's meaningful.
I'm grateful to both of you for your time today. Grateful for our listeners as we reinvigorate and create this series to get to know our team better, for joining us for this story. As we move forward with this series for Victory podcast, we look forward to going beyond those labels with our teammates, because we have an incredible team and there's so much more to them than what you see in those bios and on the surface. I appreciate you both and look forward to the next conversation.